If you've been keeping up with Jujutsu Kaisen, you probably already know what I'm talking about. And for those of you who don't know, Jujutsu Kaisen is in its final arc, allegedly. So because it's on its final arc, we're essentially finally reaching the climax. The story theoretically should be coming to an end fairly soon. But if you kept up with the public discourse around Jujutsu Kaisen, then you understand that there's kind of two camps. There's people who are just kind of just saying like, F it, whatever happens, happens. And the other that are just kind of, their brain is melting because they can't comprehend what they're reading, you know? Now I fall more in the camp of, I'm just trying to have fun with it because at this point, I don't really know what's going to happen. And I don't even think Gege, the author, even knows what's going to happen next. This is going to be a fairly spoilery video, so if you just don't want to hear anything about what Jujutsu Kaisen and essentially the current arc that it's on is about or anything like that, or what leads up to it or whatever, anything, if you just don't want to be spoiled at all, you're an anime only or something, you only watch the anime, then leave, because it's going to have some pretty heavy spoilers, at least in regards to things that happen within the in the current arc. So what is happening? Okay, so we all know the infamous, nah, I'd win. And then we also know the infamous, yeah. Now, I've already been saying this for a long time. And that is that Jujutsu Kaisen had a huge problem in which it made a protagonist so OP that it pretty much reduced the stakes of the show to zero. And you can see this, because every time there's a big conflict, either Gojo has to be sent away for some reason, or they just seal them away, and which pretty much felt like a band-aid on the problem that Jujutsu Kaisen has, which is having an insanely OP character. And I've also gone through the kind of 3 scenarios that the author could have taken in order for him to rectify this problem, so to speak. One of the scenarios is introduce an insanely OP villain that the super OP hero can't necessarily defeat by himself. He has to kind of call upon the help of others, and in that way they sort of take on the big bad guy. It's more of a teamwork type thing. It doesn't feel so rug pully or anything like that. It's just more of like typical power of friendship defeats all type thing. Second one is you make the character weaker through some kind of in-anime event. Either they have to give up their power for some particular reason, they save someone, they have to give it up for some sort of condition to be met, yada yada yada, or they just get weakened through like some in-game like villain's power. Maybe like the villain is super weak, but his main power is that like he can suck the power out of someone else, yada yada yada. That's one way they could have done it. 3 is they just straight off kill off the character and just sort of let the consequences of those actions, play out. And Jujutsu Kaisen kind of did the all of them to a certain extent. After Gojo gets released from the prison realm, I think it's pretty much canonically mentioned that he is weaker than he was because it took like a lot of, curse energy or whatever the fuck it is to essentially like escape the prison realm. And then not only that, they pretty much made Sukuna the strongest villain. And because he's so strong, we got this. I've always been a fan of make the character weaker in some sort of way, or just straight up take away their powers. That way it's a more noble cause. They gave up their powers for a bigger reason. I'm thinking of like Muriel from My Hero Academia. I think he was a pretty good example of introducing a really OP character that could overshadow the main protagonist. But because that problem was, present, they had to take away his powers in some way. And he did it in a very in-character way, which is he protected essentially a child who was suffering because, he also had pretty like not a messed up background or even like a childhood or anything like that. It's more so like him as a hero, he wants to have everyone he saves smiling. And how can he really live up to that hype if he can't even protect this one girl? I've always been that way because, again, more noble, makes sense, and it doesn't really feel like a cop-out as long as it's done correctly. And I was really worried when we first got the news that, Gojo just, or let's just say he's freaking dead, all right? I didn't want to say it because it's still really weird. Now, the reason this felt weird is because it didn't solve the problem, which is you have an OP character, so how are you going to deal with them? Because what ended up happening is the first case scenario, whereas you have this OP villain and he was able to defeat the most OP hero, so who is left to defeat the OP villain? This is essentially what is currently happening. It just seems like Gege is throwing every single character known to man at Sukuna just to weaken him down. And I'm going to be honest, I don't even think Gege knows how this story is going to end. Every chapter I read pretty much feels like he's prolonging this battle so that he can think of some way that could end fine, or at least in a way that doesn't feel like a goddamn rug pull, because that's kind of what anything that happens after this is gonna feel like. I'm in 100% agreement that Sukuna versus Gojo probably is and should have always been the end fight. As much as Yuji is the protagonist, I think he's just a symptom of the overall problem of having Gojo become the most powerful character. In the way Jujutsu Kaisen was progressing, it never felt like Yuji was ever going to get to the point where he could pretty much 1v1 Sukuna. And you could say that Yuta might have been the one to be propped up to also kind of help in this whole ambush type thing, along with like all the other characters, right? They could have done, and I guess this is spoilers for My Hero, so if you don't want My Hero spoilers, then leave. They could have done sort of like what they're doing in My Hero currently, which is all the heroes are pretty much fighting All For One and all of his like minions and stuff, and you know, all of his subordinates. But ultimately, there's multiple people taking on All For One. It's not just Deku. But that didn't really happen, and it's all because they chose to sort of make it a 1v1 at the end, which, you know, I get it, like, sort of the way those two characters wanted to fight. It makes character and in-universe sense as to why they would want to do it that way. Logically, it's like, what? Just gang up on the guy. Just beat him up, you know, try to get Megumi out of him, and then, you know, kill him, and then, you know, do all this other stuff. I'm not mad about that. It just really seems like Gege doesn't exactly know where he's taking the story at the moment. And let's not mention Geto, or Kenjaku, not Geto, because Kenjaku, the way his end is met, also feels kind of like a rug pull cop-out. I really was thinking that they might have done something funny, because they had, what's his name? The guy with the funny pants and the funny suit. There we go, Takaba. I really thought that they were going to go with like the idea that the funniest thing that Takaba can do is to pretty much bring Gojo back to life, and that would be like his ultimate joke, right? Like, haha, you thought you won, sucker. This is funny as fuck. Here's prime Gojo again. But that didn't happen. Yuta was the one that ended up killing Kenjaku, which, fine. I didn't really have a problem with that. And then Yuta just kind of immediately goes and fights Sukuna, which was actually pretty cool for like the 3 chapters it happened. And that's the problem. It just feels like I don't know how to explain it, but this final arc of Jujutsu Kaisen feels so prolonged and yet so rushed at the same time. At this point, I've lost track of how many chapters it's been going on for. It's been going on for what, like, granted, it's only been about 40 chapters, which really isn't long, but somehow it's getting drawn out, and then it's also simultaneously rushed. Which is, again, why I keep saying that I don't think Gege knows exactly where he's taking the story. And I really do feel like he created a problem for himself by killing off Gojo. I don't think that's where the story should have gone. And I also don't think the final fight should have happened as early as it did. It really felt like we needed at least like 20, 30 more chapters to set up some things, and then that leading into the final fight. Like, it really should have been like the team or whoever's left over is tackling Kenjaku, and then Kenjaku does something that pretty much sabotages the team, so that maybe like in that way it weakens Gojo. You know, you have that connection. Maybe Gojo doesn't want to fully kill Kenjaku because he's still in Geto's body, because Geto was sort of like his best friend, yada yada yada. And using a trap in that way, make Gojo weaker. And so then because he's weaker, he realizes he can't really fight Sukuna on his own as much as he wants to. It'd be like a hit to his pride. Essentially what happens when he gets defeated by Sukuna. He understands that he probably is going to need help in order to fight Sukuna. And then you pretty much get like Yuta, Yuji, and Gojo, pretty much those 3, and Maki, pretty much get those 3 or those 4 to fight Sukuna. It's a pretty like hard battle. Sukuna can do some like bullshit. He could send Maharaga. You know, this is just me spitballing, and with the power of hindsight, mind you. Writing a manga series is incredibly hard, so I don't really blame him for trying to take any like shortcuts. But overall, I'm just not really happy where the story's kind of going, because ultimately it just feels rushed and prolonged. And Jujutsu Kaisen never had like top tier writing or anything of the sort. It's always been pretty much just a shonen, right? You get good action, you get good art. The story is sort of in the background. It is not the main focus. You're kind of just there for the ride. And at this point, that's all I'm really here for. I'm just here for the ride. Writing manga is hard. Like, no author, in my opinion, has thoroughly thought out the entirety of their story. It's kind of the reason why there's so many inconsistencies with a lot of shonen. A lot of times manga writers are only doing it week by week, because you have to realize that manga authors pretty much have to work with the idea in mind that their serialization, their manga could end at any point. So at most, like maybe the first 2 arcs are well thought out, and then the rest is sort of, they just kind of have to think of it on the way. And I think Jujutsu Kaisen is a symptom of that. It's a symptom of Gege. A symptom of one, him creating a character that's super OP. Two, kind of creating the story as he goes and pretty much having too many problems in his story early on and not really fixing them throughout. And three, because of those other two problems, he is essentially writing himself into a hole. I guess that's what it really feels like. It really just feels like he wrote himself into a hole. Again, I don't blame the guy. Writing manga is hard. It's not easy at all. I totally understand. Which is why at this point, I'm just in it for the ride. I'm just trying to see what happens. If I have to make one guess, and I want this to be on record, in case I'm right, a lot of theories going around as to what could potentially happen. There's the whole theory that Yuji might be Sukuna's like reincarnated twin, that Sukuna like killed or absorbed in the womb. I forgot what the theory exactly states. Okay, quick interjection, because as I was editing this, it was brought to my attention that new translations pretty much revealed that Sukuna is Yuji's uncle and that Yuji's dad was Sukuna's reincarnated brother. Therefore, Yuji is Sukuna's nephew. I don't know what that does to the story. I don't know. It really doesn't really change much, but it's interesting. I'm just going to keep with the updates. I don't know what that's going to do, but cool, I guess. The theory that Yuji is going to use his soul separating powers to separate Sukuna and Megumi, which we kind of saw in some recent chapters, where Yuji actually talks to Megumi's soul, but his soul is just broken. He doesn't really want to come back. And then there's the whole thing about Gojo returning, which I'm going to be honest, I'm not sure is going to 100% happen. If I have to guess, what's going to fucking happen? Because there's a lot of things they have to get through. They somehow have to rescue Megumi and kill Sukuna. Those are the main two. Okay. Here's my prediction. Gojo's coming back. He's not going to defeat Sukuna. Yuji is going to use his soul-splitting powers to send Gojo into Sukuna. Gojo is going to talk no jutsu Megumi. Megumi is going to, from inside Sukuna, summon Mahoraga. Now, I don't know how it's going to work because Mahoraga died, but he's going to summon Mahoraga. With the power of adaptation, Mahoraga is somehow going to adapt to Sukuna's body and get him out of Sukuna. A weakened Sukuna is going to be like, oh damn, I'm kind of fucked. Everyone at this point is super weak, so he's going to try to shove his fingers down Gojo, because Gojo's back. And then at that moment, Yuji is going to use his soul swapping abilities to swap with Sukuna. And then I don't know who, but someone's going to deliver the final blow to Sukuna. Maybe it's like a hollow purple by Gojo. That is my prediction. Now, is it stupid? Yeah, it is. But it makes as much sense as anything else that's going on in the manga right now. And that's pretty much it. This isn't really meant to be a criticism on Gege or anything like that. Again, being a manga author is incredibly hard. It's really hard to maintain consistent quality in your story's narrative and art. But it's kind of just my thoughts on what it is that went wrong with the manga, as well as what I might have done if I was the one writing it. But again, I have the power of hindsight. But overall, that's pretty much it. Thanks for joining. Thanks for watching. If you made it all the way here, like, comment, subscribe. I don't know. I can't tell you what to do. I'm not your mom. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Peace.